This morning, Jody sneered as she rifled through my medication bottles in the kitchen cabinet. In 4 hours, I must legally transfer ownership of the house to a women's shelter trust. My suitcase is packed, and I reserved a small apartment where only my granddaughter can visit without warning. The backyard air was crisp and faintly smelled of damp earth when I stepped outside. Jody stood by the fence, arms crossed, scanning the mail pile I'd left on the porch. Her mouth twitched into a smirk. "Still pretending this place is yours?" she said, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. My son, standing beside her, chuckled without meeting my eyes. His silence felt like agreement. I pulled out my phone, voice steady. "What exactly did you say about the will at the meeting last night?" I tapped record and held it near her. Jody's eyes flicked to the device. "It's not my fault you won't see the house again. You're too slow to act." The sharpness in her tone was unmistakable, a weapon she wielded routinely. My hands shook slightly, but I kept my expression blank. Years of legal work taught me to hold ground under pressure. Every word she uttered was evidence, proof I needed for the legal files I began yesterday. The clock was ticking. 48 hours remained before the next family gathering, where Jody would push her influence harder, twisting opinions and tightening her grip on shared assets. Losing control wasn't an option. Inside, I spread documents across the kitchen table. Bank statements, the trust agreement, medical records. My eyes scanned for any overlooked clause. The morning's humiliation stung, but I didn't respond with anger or confrontation. Instead, I drafted formal notices to legal counsel and financial advisors, outlining breaches of trust and contesting Jody's claims. Jody's dismissiveness was a constant barrier. Earlier, she called my warnings desperate threats in front of my son, using his laughter as a shield. That passive alliance between them complicated matters. But I had new leverage. A whistleblower hotline ticket filed last night about financial irregularities she orchestrated through my son's account. The laptop screen blinked with a new email from the shelter trustee confirming receipt of my transfer documents. The house's future depended on this fragile legal chain. I found a quiet moment to record a private voice memo. "Jody's words today. You're too slow to act. Noted. Use this in court." My voice was firm, despite the betrayal seeping into my bones. Privacy was scarce. Every family interaction risked exposure. I replayed her exact phrase several times, embedding the tone and cadence. It was the admission I needed to prove intent and coercion. The afternoon waned as the legal files grew thicker. I knew Jody's next move would involve leveraging my son's financial access to delay proceedings. Anticipating this, I included specific clauses in my drafts to restrict such interference. By evening, exhaustion weighed on my limbs, but I forced my fingers to type the opening lines of a formal complaint. Public confrontation was off the table. I chose law, a calculated channel demanding time, precision, and patience. Before closing the laptop, I reviewed the day's recordings. The risks were clear: emotional strain, loss of social standing among relatives, and the looming threat of family fracture. This was no longer about mere words between kin. It was a legal battle for autonomy before the house was sold. The next 48 hours would decide who controlled the narrative and the property. I set reminders for tomorrow's deadlines and prepared my defense for the inevitable counterattack from Jody and her network. The suitcase lay by the door. The only visits now would come from those I trusted. The rest had declared themselves adversaries. At day's end, I chose law over confrontation, a quiet pivot that shifted the entire fight onto my terms. The lawyer's office fluorescence hummed steadily as I spread the papers before me. Revocation notices, draft wills, trust amendments. The clock read 9:12 a.m., 15 days to finalize the transfer. But time was slipping away. My hands trembled slightly. Age had stolen some steadiness, though my voice remained calm. Jodie Carver's network will push back, Elaine said, adjusting her glasses. Her son controls the financial channels. He's already spoken with my assistant. They're trying to intercept filings through relatives. I folded my arms. I anticipated that. There's a clause banning any direct or indirect interference by them, extending to their associates. Elaine nodded, flipping pages. Still, their procedural timeline leaves room. Contesting a revocation can drag on for weeks. Even if you file today, administrative slowdowns are almost certain. Jodie knows how to stall. My eyes lingered on the typed paragraphs, assigning all house sale proceeds to the women's shelter. Non-negotiable. Delays risk everything. If the sale isn't completed before the trust dissolves, Jodie's family could reclaim assets. Elaine tapped a line. I suggest tightening the power of attorney revocation date and adding penalties for breaches. That'll make their interference exponentially costlier. Legal battles with you won't be cheap. I jotted notes, pen clicking steadily. Every dollar spent chipped the savings, but stopping Jodie justified the expense. Strengthen those clauses. If they wield financial influence through her son, we must expose him legally. Elaine paused. I warned you about evidence. Your filing needs to document all contacts. We'll use timestamps and communications metadata to prove a pattern of harassment. Each attempt to block or delay strengthens your case. Her words mirrored what I'd seen on screens. Jodie's son made calls timed precisely with our filings. He'd recruited allies among distant family to apply social pressure. The plan felt cold, calculated. Suddenly, Elaine's phone vibrated on the desk. She glanced at the screen and frowned. Jodie scheduled a meeting with me. She says it's about family legal affairs. I haven't responded. I clenched my jaw. She's fishing for information. No lawyer on my side should entertain her tactics. Elaine locked her phone. Agreed. I'll stay professional but guarded. If she tries to undermine or delay, we'll document everything. Alarm rose inside me. The legal control was shifting. Jodie's moves were more direct. She was mobilizing her influence openly, forcing a confrontation I had to outmaneuver. We returned to the draft. I insisted on explicit clauses forbidding any family member from assuming control before the trust's dissolution, with steep forfeiture penalties payable directly to the shelter if breached. Elaine printed the final pages. Send me every message, call log, any contact linked to their side. We'll file formal complaints citing harassment and interference. I slid documents into envelopes. The cost mounted, but so did the stakes. Outside the office, the midday sun warmed the courthouse steps. 15 days, then the trust's sale must be complete. No exceptions, or everything would collapse. Jodie's mounting pressure was a clear threat, one I would meet with calculated resistance. I breathed in the faint scent of legal paper, steady despite my limits. The house, the trust, my dignity depended on these clauses. If Jodie intended control through her son, I'd strip her access, clause by clause. The game had shifted. The legal fight was no longer abstract, but urgent and personal. The bank lobby's pale walls echoed my steady steps as the clock showed 20 minutes past the hour. I gripped a thick folder of documents, trust amendments, revocation notices, and power of attorney cancellations, all finalized with Elaine's signature. Today, Before the house sale proceeds, I needed to erase my son's financial access. A teller glanced up, caught between protocol and reluctance. I'm here to revoke my son's authorization on all accounts, I said evenly, hands folded on the counter. The signed paperwork is here. It's effective within 48 hours of filing. She hesitated. Without family consensus, we can't act immediately. The bank prefers a joint request. Her eyes flicked to a small office where a man busied himself with a phone. The clock shifted. 20 days remained before the house sale completed. Any delay risked Jody Carver's interference. I pulled out a handwritten letter from Elaine, notarized and signed, stating that this revocation superseded any prior agreements. The teller scanned it and nodded. I'll send this to compliance. It should be processed quickly. Almost then, a sharp call cut through. The manager appeared, voice clipped. This is Jody Carver. I've reported mismanagement on these accounts. I demand a freeze pending investigation. His eyes searched mine. We have to consider her claim. I met his gaze, breathing slowly. Her call doesn't override legal documents, I said. The revocation and trust clauses are clear. He frowned. Her family reputation influences our decision-makers. She's related to a major account holder. His fingers hovered over the phone as if weighing a call. Please refer strictly to the paperwork, I replied, lips pressed firmly. No verbal requests can delay processing. The switch must happen within 48 hours. My son has no further authority. He nodded reluctantly. The teller printed forms, the cold silence shrinking the wide room. My hands, resting on the countertop, relaxed slightly. The bank's hesitation hinted at cracks in control. Jody's voice pierced again through the manager's phone. Freezing the accounts will destabilize my brother's business. You'll be liable. The manager winced, breaking eye contact. We're investigating. No guarantees yet. A pattern snapped into place. Jody applied pressure through family networks to stall. Her call was a covert gambit to buy time. But the bank's rules respected signed papers. That margin was thin, but it was mine. The transaction official handed me a receipt. Revocation requests like this usually clear compliance within 2 days. If there's undue delay or interference, note it immediately. I nodded, aware that observation might become part of my legal defense. Leaving the bank, a chill brushed my loose coat as my attention sharpened. The silent confrontation exposed my isolation. Relatives questioned my decisions. Only a few trusted my resolve. Behind Jody's aggressive moves, the family line tightened into a trap. I slid the receipt into my folder, steady despite age and weariness. Losing my son's access was no victory. It marked a fracture. Tensions would only worsen once the accounts shifted. Outside, cars passed slowly beneath heavy grey clouds. The house sale ticker advanced. 18 days left. The legal battle had begun anew, but this time I held a small advantage, backed by signed documents that no threat over the phone could undo. The beige walls of my new apartment offered little comfort. The clock on the wall marked 11:43 a.m. I folded the legal papers again, the faint rustle of the fragile pages loud in the quiet room. Elaine's notarized letters gave me a fragile edge, a revocation of power of attorney, trust amendments, all set to stop Jody Carver's reach. But the tension didn't ease. Every moment counted. The house sale deadline loomed, only 27 days left. A knock startled me. Clara, my granddaughter, slipped in before I could respond properly, carrying an envelope. Her visits were unannounced and unwelcome to Jody, a risk for both of us. Clara's eyes flickered with worry and caution. "Got something for you," she whispered, passing me the mail, a letter marked urgent. I read silently. A notice from the county clerk confirming receipt of the trust amendment filings, time-stamped just hours ago, official and recent. "Where did you get this?" I asked softly. Clara glanced toward the door, voice low. "I know people. I wait till they leave." Her allegiance was clear, but concealed, essential in our battle. Jody had intensified her pressure. Last night, I received a cruel message accusing Clara of betraying the family for siding with me instead of Jody. Jody used the family network to isolate me, weaponizing my son's finances and their social ties. I felt the strain deepen with every minute Clara stayed, every risk she took by crossing Jody's watchful gaze. "You're playing a dangerous game," I said, the weight in my throat heavy. "If Jody finds out—" "I know," Clara cut in, her face set. "But you need this." She reached into her bag, pulling out more mail, billing statements and recent bank notifications confirming the financial holds Jody had pushed through. She paused before slipping the papers quietly under my door. I watch. I listen. Her covert help anchored me in isolation, but escalated my solitude. I could not reveal her visits without inviting scrutiny. Every tick of the clock pressed harder. The legal standing had to be confirmed within 7 days, or Jody's challenge would ruin the sale. The apartment's thin walls offered no privacy. Hours ago, my phone buzzed with a call from the bank manager, confirming reluctantly the revocation notices should clear within 48 hours despite Jody's pressure. Yet the threat of frozen accounts loomed. The legal documents, airtight on paper, faced human obstruction no clause could immediately stop. I closed my eyes briefly to steady my voice. "You must be careful," I said, "for both our sake." Clara nodded, hesitating as she clutched something else, a small voice recorder. She didn't explain, but placed it beside my documents before slipping away silently. Left alone, the silence pressed in like a thick fog. The cost of this fight was more than paperwork or legal hurdles. It was the loneliness of broken family ties and relentless vigilance. Yet Clara's quiet rebellion gave me unexpected strength. Tonight, Jody would try another move through her son's financial channels. Tomorrow, I would file new evidence documenting interference, each timestamp a weapon. The legal deadline pulsed constantly. Every hour closer tightened the noose or pulled the lever. In this cramped apartment, with its blank walls and ticking clock, I braced for what came next. My dignity depended on it. My autonomy depended on it. And now, with Clara's silent support, maybe I was not as alone as I feared. The grey walls of Elaine's cramped study carried a faint scent of coffee and old paper. The desk lamp flickered as I settled into the hard chair, hands trembling slightly, while unfolding a small voice recorder Clara had stealthily slipped to me. 6 days remained until the court hearing. 5 more until the bank's review completed. Every ticking second mattered. Elaine sat across, eyes fixed on the documents I'd brought, amended trust papers, power of attorney cancellations, and a sealed envelope marked confidential. I pressed play. The son's voice was low, guarded. "I'm meeting Jody tomorrow. She says she'll help us undo Mum's changes, get control back. We have to move fast, before the judge." Elaine's brow furrowed. "He admits the plan outright. This recording proves their intent to reverse your legal actions." She tapped a pen firmly against a contract. "We'll file this immediately. It strengthens your position." A sharp knock cut through the tension. Elaine's assistant entered with 2 letters, one from the bank's compliance unit, the other from a local elder advocacy group. Elaine read aloud. The bank confirmed your revocation filings will finalize within 48 hours, despite Jodi's interference. I nodded, although relief felt fragile. Jodi's influence ran deeper than the bank. Elaine added, "She's leaked your medical records to a tabloid. They're spinning a story that you're unfit. Social pressure will rise. Several relatives have already been contacted." I folded my hands tightly, steadying my breath. Isolation tightened around me. Clara's whispered message, "Keep the recorder safe," echoed clearly in my mind. Sunlight filtered weakly through a thin layer of dust on the study's windowsill. I carefully slid the recorder into the sealed envelope. Tomorrow's family meeting would be more than just talk. Later that evening, my phone buzzed with Clara's text. "Your son's allegiance is cracking. He called me today, scared and confused." I replied quickly, "Record everything. No trust." I rose slowly, muscles stiff after hours of sitting. The house's silence pressed on me, as relentless as Jodi's social attacks. Every call to relatives, every rumour she sowed, threatened to shatter the tenuous support I held. Yet the recording was irrefutable proof. It exposed the collusion between my son and Jodi, a secret pact to strip away my autonomy. Until now, his loyalty had stayed hidden behind silence. Now it broke openly. I reviewed my strategy. File the recording with court exhibits tomorrow. Alert elder advocates to Jodi's harassment. Brace for backlash. The legal battle was narrow, but I held the evidence to preserve my rights. I touched the recorder beneath my coat, feeling its cold, reassuring weight. Jodi's tactics ranged from financial chokeholds to whispered threats, but their front line had cracked. Outside, dusk stained the sky in deep purple hues. A clock ticked relentlessly. 5 days until the recording's exposure, 6 to the hearing, 27 before the house would be sold. My autonomy and dignity hinged on the truth I held and the fractures it revealed within my family. Tomorrow the battle would surface. Tonight, I sat calm and steady. The pieces were in place. The son's betrayal uncovered, Jodi's siege exposed. The recordings and filings would be my shield. The community hall's harsh fluorescent light flickered as family gathered around the chipped folding tables. 10 days remained to block the trust sale. I sat quietly in my loose coat, my trembling hands folded over legal documents. Jodi Carver stood by the entrance with that same sneer, arms crossed, her voice rising above the low murmurs. "She's manipulating the truth again." Jodi spat, eyes flicking toward my son. "I ask you all, how can we trust this so-called amendment? The family deserves transparency." My son stayed silent, gaze fixed on his phone. No support, no confrontations. His evasiveness cut deeper than words. Elaine had advised me to use this gathering to expose Jodi's pressure tactics. I cleared my throat and addressed the room evenly. "The revocation of my power of attorney is valid and processed. The bank confirmed clearance within 48 hours despite interference." Jodi's lips curled into a half smirk. She pulled out her smartphone, scrolling visibly. "Look at this," she said, showing a live social media feed. "This post questions Margaret's mental state. Family members have talked, and the narrative is shifting." I recognized the tactic, public opinion weaponized to isolate me further. Whispers swelled in the room, tension mounting like static in the air. My son shifted, still avoiding eye contact, but finally spoke in a flat tone. "I won't take sides. The trust's validity requires further review." The words were a silent blow. Neutrality was not support, but it surprised me. He declared no allegiance to Jodi's campaign. That stance constrained her already limited maneuvering. Mabel, my granddaughter, sat a few seats away. Her soft, steady expression contrasted sharply with the family's fracturing. She remained silent throughout, a calm island amid turmoil. Jodi's gaze hardened. Neutrality benefits no one but legal delays. I held my breath as my son's withdrawal of explicit support fractured Jodi's plan to consolidate influence via his financial access. Elaine had prepared filings anticipating this shift. With the son's non-alignment, legal procedures gained new strength. I flipped open my smartphone to a secure app. Clara's recorded messages from earlier confirmed Jodi's ongoing manipulation, leaked medical details, whispers cast to relatives, and a growing social media storm. Each item was a data point supporting our case. Family unity shouldn't be weaponized, I said, voice steady despite weariness. The sale proceeds unless the courts find cause, not based on hearsay or public opinion. Jodi's smirk faltered. She flourished a printed copy of a trust clause and challenged the crowd. Here, I stand for the legal reality, not this revision. The room's murmurs quieted in uncertainty. The son's silence and question toward legal validity unsettled her campaign. I closed my folder. The courts will decide soon. I urge you to consider the facts, not the noise. No cheers followed, only the weight of fractured relationships and suspicion. The clock pressed down. 10 days until the trust finalized. The legal process had momentum, and my son's neutrality tipped the balance in my favor. Jodi's social media spin was exposed, but still destabilized the family. Mabel's quiet presence was a reminder. In this division, restraint could outlast aggression. Outside, phones buzzed with alerts from Elaine. The next filings were due by noon tomorrow. I gathered my documents, steady despite trembling limbs. Isolation deepened, family bonds strained, but my legal autonomy grew firmer. The contest was far from over. But today, the family gathering revealed cracks in Jodi's control and an unexpected ally in the son's silence. The legal path advanced. Dignity awaited preservation. The courthouse waiting room had cracked linoleum and flickering fluorescent lights. The clock above the clerk's window read 08:50, 10 minutes until filing opened. My legs ached from standing too long, and my shaking hands tightened slightly around the manila folder containing the trust documents. Elaine sat behind the glass, already rifling through paperwork. Her eyes met mine briefly, steady as ever. "We'll file everything today?" she said softly. I nodded, swallowing the exhaustion pressing in from days without enough rest. My loose coat shifted as I adjusted my satchel. This was the last chance. In 72 hours, the house would be settled into that trust, beyond Jodi Carver's reach. Jodi's presence wasn't physical here, but her influence hovered. Through whispered calls, her son delayed cooperating, blocking signatures and delaying paperwork. She'd threatened relatives, using social media posts implying I was unfit, playing on old family grudges. I heard about the whispers, the quiet phone calls, the way my name was being dragged. A clerk opened the filing window. "Documents ready?" Elaine handed over the bundle, including the secret recording Clara provided, the one that exposed the son's scheming. That recording had strengthened our case. Jodi tried to stop it from reaching the judge, but we had it securely logged with timestamps and metadata intact. Minutes later, I sat in the courtroom. The walls were sterile, but the tension was heavy. Jodi's lawyer made a last-minute motion for an injunction, claiming procedural errors and mental incapacity. I felt the weight in my chest, the years catching up, tremors in my fingers as I gripped the armrest. Judge Ramirez reviewed the documents methodically. She requested the recording from Elaine. The audio played clearly, my son and Jody plotting to revoke my legal decisions. The courtroom was still, except the faint crackle from speakers. Jody's lawyer pressed harder, calling for delay. My client's family influence demands caution, he insisted. Elaine responded without hesitation. All procedures complied with. No evidence supports incapacity claims. The judge paused, then shook her head. Motion denied. Filing proceeds. Relief unfolded slowly across my face, but I stayed poised. The countermeasures worked. The trust terms would hold. Elaine began finalizing the filing. Outside, I caught Clara's eye. Her worried look was tempered by a small, resolute nod. Walking back past the empty lobby, my steps were unsteady but determined. The son's neutrality had saved me from another layer of manipulation. The time pressure remained, 30 days until final sale, but now I held the legal shield firm. The familial fractures deepened, but my autonomy was protected. My suitcase remained packed in the apartment I had secured. Only my granddaughter could visit without warning. This fight was far from over, but the paperwork in that courtroom ensured Jody's attempt to seize control faltered today. I exhaled in the cool morning air and adjusted my coat. Each moment counted. I was still here, still standing, still in control, by the letter of the law. The nursing home's quiet lounge smelled faintly of disinfectant as I sat by the window, sunlight cutting a narrow line on the linoleum floor. It was under 8:12. My trembling hands gripped the edges of a legal folder containing the most recent trust documents. 6 days remained before the trust sale finalized. I had withdrawn from the family's confrontations. The apartment felt safer, even if lonelier. Clara's soft knock came just after 08:15. She slipped in quietly, her expression taut. "Grandma," Jody called again. "She's demanding an emergency meeting with your son. Says it's urgent." Her voice was low but tense. "I expected as much," I replied, setting the folder down. "She's desperate." Clara's eyes searched mine. "She's also been spreading rumors among relatives, urging them to withhold signatures, trying to delay the final paperwork." Each word spelled deeper isolation. Jody's tactics had escalated, from smears on social media to direct manipulation, rallying family members to block my autonomy. The pressure was no longer just legal, it was a social siege. "I will not respond to her demands," I said firmly. "I've prepared every necessary document, and Elaine confirmed compliance. The court will proceed." My voice was calm, my face revealed little, but inside a slow knot tightened. Minutes later, my phone buzzed. A message from Elaine confirming the judge denied Jody's latest injunction. The legal blockade had failed, but the threat persisted. Jody's pattern was clear: pressure my son to act, ostracize me from relatives, stall the trust's finalization. Yet my son's silence, frustrating as it was, served as a barrier to Jody's grip. He refused to sign any papers conceding control. His conflicted stance insulated me. Clara sat beside me, handing over a small packet of mail. Mostly notes from relatives unsure where loyalties lay. Hands shaking slightly, I placed post-its on documents, marking signatures secured, pending, or refused. At 08:45, I checked the recorder hidden in my blouse. It held Jody's recent voicemails, sharp, biting commands layered with veiled threats toward family members. Evidence for Elaine, evidence I carried like armor. I slipped on my loose coat. Its familiar weight settled around me. My suitcase rested by the door, packed for the apartment where only Clara might visit unannounced. Isolation was a cost, but it shielded my dignity. The clock ticked methodically. At 08:58, Clara stood, folding herself into a quiet farewell. "You're holding strong," she said. I nodded, steady despite the tremor in my hands. I must. The final signatures awaited submission. From here, control was legal, not emotional. At 09 seconds, I stepped outside into the cold morning air, setting the next move in motion. Jodi's attempts to divide, manipulate, and coerce had not fractured my resolve. Despite her push for an emergency family meeting, I chose silence and legal safeguards. My granddaughter's quiet presence was my only bridge to family now. The sale's deadline loomed, but my autonomy, secured through documents, patience, and quiet resistance, remained intact. The isolation ahead promised loneliness, but losing control was no longer an option. Jodi's pressure peaked, yet I did not yield. This chapter closes with the house's future decided beyond her grasp, and my dignity preserved by law. The shelter's linoleum floor felt cold and slick beneath my shoes, worn thin by countless footsteps. Sitting across from Ruth, the director, I watched her calm hands fold and unfold as she spoke softly. "Every day, we're pushed to the brink. Beds are always full, resources scarce. Your trust sale will keep this place alive." I nodded, swallowing a tremble that ran through my fingers. Only 3 days remained before the house sale finalized, stripping away my autonomy. Ruth's steady voice tethered me back. "People like you make this possible. That funds will literally save lives." Outside, the shelter hummed with subdued urgency. Women and children moved in quiet clusters, weary faces etched with hardship. I caught Clara's eye across the room. Without a word, she slid me a sealed envelope. Inside was a printout of recent bank transfers, labeled for emergency aid. Proof this shelter wasn't just an idea, but a lifeline. Yet, Jodi's shadow lingered relentlessly. She had begun seeding doubts about my capacity to manage the trust, whispering rumors through family lines. My son's phone buzzed non-stop, Jodi pressing him to stall, to withhold the final signatures needed to seal the sale. He hesitated, glancing between us. Confronting him, I found his voice tight, burdened. "Mum, I'm stuck in the middle. Jodi's got leverage, connections," he said, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. I remained silent, knowing words wouldn't sway him now. Ruth leaned closer, lowering her voice. "We've had calls too. Jodi's been pressuring shelter staff, trying to discredit you and fracture trust." My grip tightened on the chair's arms, fighting the rapid whirl of fear and frustration. My legal team cautioned against public confrontation. Any fight would only fuel Jodi's fire. So I moved with care, letting Elaine navigate the law while I stayed the quiet force behind the scenes. The envelope in my lap shifted again. Clara's eyes were wide but unreadable. Inside, concealed beneath papers, was a voice recording I had nearly missed. My son admitting he had orchestrated delays and family dissent. Elaine had prepared this as evidence. I glanced up at the clock on the wall. Its ticking seemed sharper, each second a pulse of urgency. Ruth's voice cut through the silence. "People here depend on you. Without this trust, the shelter won't survive the winter. The sale is imminent. You have to hold firm." Her words settled over me like a heavy cloak of responsibility. Isolation had surrounded me since this ordeal began. Family frayed, rumors gnawed away support. But here, in this stark room, amid the quiet urgency, clarity emerged. My legal autonomy meant more than paperwork. It was my last defense of dignity. The house sale wasn't just property changing hands. It was a measure of whether my will and decisions would be honored. I rose slowly, stiffness from years of quiet battles prickling my legs. Ruth's steady gaze met mine. "Let the shelter fight with what you've given," I said quietly. "Let us finish this." Outside, the pull of family voices and Jodi's pressure tugged at me, but within, something shifted, a renewed purpose, a silent promise. The trust's sale was more than finance. It was a testament where law met human need. As I left, Clara brushed my hand briefly. No words exchanged. I carried the envelope, the recording, and beneath it all, fragile hope that dignity would endure. Not just in law, but in life. The lawyer's office, framed by tall windows, held the faint scent of paper and varnish. The digital clock on Elaine's desk read 10:15 a.m. 4 hours until the emergency hearing. My hands trembled lightly as I unfolded the latest motion Jodi's lawyer submitted. He argued my mental state invalidates the will, citing a conflicting medical report obtained through my son's lawyer. Elaine tapped her pen against the desk edge. "They're pushing for delay. The court scheduled the hearing within 24 hours because of the sale deadline." I nodded slowly, the weight in my chest stubborn. Jodi's tactics escalate. Pressure on my son continues. He withholds signatures needed to finalize the trust transfer. Elaine's eyes narrowed. She's mobilized the family network. Calls, social media posts. Some relatives informally refuse to cooperate. We anticipated this, but it complicates your position. We must stay precise and silent. My fingers traced the edges of my suitcase beside the chair. Today marks 26 days since I packed it quietly. Losing control here means surrendering more than property. My grasp on dignity. The house sale unlocks funds vital to the shelter Mabel supports. That outcome cannot falter. Suddenly, Elaine slid a thick envelope across the desk. I requested a full records search, including wills filed before the contested one. There's an older will from 20 years ago, Mabel's grandmother's. It contains a clause you must see. Carefully, I unfolded the typed pages. "Here," Elaine said, pointing. "Clause 12. It grants you irrevocable authority over any future house sale proceeds, regardless of later wills or capacity claims." I blinked, rereading the sentence. Final control, unchallengeable. "Yes," Elaine confirmed. "The judge was briefed this morning. We expect her to accept this clause as decisive." The phone buzzed. Elaine glanced down. A text from the courtroom. "Jodi's lawyer has submitted new medical testimony contradicting our expert. They claim you lacked lucidity during will execution." I swallowed the tremor rising in my throat. "It's the last attempt to discredit me." Elaine's voice held firm. "Not if the clause stands. Your legal autonomy remains intact." A visitor appeared at the door, a messenger. He passed me a sealed envelope with the court's official stamp. Inside, the hearing notice and a list of witnesses. My son's name appeared with an asterisk indicating expected testimony. Jodi's pressure shifted from documents to deliberate family discord. Her presence felt in every phone call between my son and other relatives. Last week's recording, Clara provided confirmed whispers of her influence in delaying signature collection. I exhaled, tightening my grip on the envelope. The fight narrowed to tomorrow's hearing. I must present the old will's clause and expose the conflicting reports. Losing the hearing would unravel decades of planning. Elaine closed her folder. "Tomorrow, we focus on that clause. Jodi's net tries to strangle your authority, but this legal anchor holds." I adjusted my coat sleeves, feeling their weight. My voice steady, I said, "Then prepare everything. I will rest tonight. Tomorrow, we end this." Leaving the office, the muted hum of the city faded behind me. The house sale is 5 days away. The judge's decision tomorrow could secure the shelter's future and my remaining control. No hesitation, no retreat. The clause changes the rules. This time, the court will recognize what has always been mine. The house was empty, save for the faint echo of my footsteps on the hardwood floor. The clock on the wall showed 10:15. In less than 2 hours, ownership of this property would transfer to the women's shelter. No one from my family showed up. I ran my trembling fingers along the cold wood of the hallway banister, steadying myself. My loose coat hung heavily on my shoulders. Across the room, Mabel sat quietly at the kitchen table, her hands folded, eyes soft but unreadable. The silence between us was louder than any accusation. The documents lay on the counter, final sale papers, bank confirmations, transfer notices. Elaine had arranged everything to prevent delays. Yet the absence of my son and the others marked the collapse of what once was family solidarity. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. A message from Clara. She'd taped a voicemail from my son, admitting he'd blocked signatures and spread rumors about my mental capacity. His voice was hesitant, weighed down by guilt, but the damage was done. Jody used him as a shield and a spear, privately pressuring him, publicly disavowing any family agreement. I dialed Elaine's number. Elaine, the final hearing's in 4 hours. Jody is rallying relatives to delay the trust transfer. We can't let her sway the bank or the shelter. My voice remained steady, despite the tremor in my hands. Margaret, listen. I found something, an old will from 20 years ago. Clause 12. It gives you irrevocable control over proceeds from this property's sale, even if later wills conflict. My heart steadied. This clause was a legal sword. No delay, no social maneuvering could override it. Elaine said she'd present it at the emergency hearing, shutting down Jody's medical testimony attempts and family manipulation. I walked through the empty rooms, each step confirming my resolve. The sale proceeds would fund shelter programs saving lives. The house was more than real estate. It was my final stand for dignity. My autonomy depended on this. At 10:45, the front door creaked open. Mabel rose and left it slightly ajar, a silent signal that only those respecting the boundary might enter. The choice was mine, control or chaos. I chose control. Minutes later, the bank manager appeared, clipboard in hand, his expression cautious. Jody's network had pressured him, but Elaine's timely submission of Clause 12 cut through his hesitations. The manager signed off on the transfer as I watched, my face calm, my hands steady. Suddenly, the phone rang. A call from the shelter director, Ruth. Funds are secure. Programs start next week. Relief washed over me, masked by my usual composure. Then, the final piece fell into place. Elaine whispered, "No one else can contest the sale now. Jody's public denouncement means family ties fracture permanently, but you have peace." I looked toward Mabel, who offered a small nod, her presence a quiet fortress. The house was sold. The family divided, yet I stood unbroken, a widow of my past, guardian of my future.